Hi, and welcome to the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast. I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert. Glad you're with us this morning. As always, Janet, my co-host, and Mike behind the scenes. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. And hey, everybody. And I would love it if you would go to YouTube and like, share, and subscribe our podcast. It's really easy. There's just a little subscribe button, and you just click on it. You don't have to pay anything. But when you subscribe, it helps us, but it also helps you because you get a little notification weekly when our podcast comes out, so you'll remember to listen to it or help share it with your friends. And if you like it, that helps too. So good morning. Good morning. With me, I always want to talk about hormones or peptides or all the different things going on. In our last podcast, you cleared up the difference between are all peptides GLP-1s, and like what's the difference between a GLP-1 and a peptide? And basically is that GLP-1s are just one category of peptides. So my other favorite subject being hormones is I wanted to touch a little bit about what are hormones, and not all hormones are sex hormones. So we think of, when we talk about hormones, we think about estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, but I want to talk about and ask you questions about all the hormones so we can clear that up. So a hormone that you love to talk about is insulin.
Yep.
And can you just tell us a little bit about that hormone?
Well, I think insulin is the most important hormone we can all have measured, right? We've talked about this over and over and over.
And when you say measured, you're meaning fasting
fasting blood insulin test, yes, to see how much insulin we're producing to try to keep our blood sugar levels wherever they are. So an A1C is a great number to have, which is a 90 to 120-day average of our blood sugar levels.
Right.
But without knowing how much insulin we're producing, it's really not nearly the information that we need or the full picture that we need to get a gauge on somebody's health. I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
I had a buddy ask me if he could do my blood panel. He's probably 30, 40 pounds overweight, but he's really active. He has an active job. And his A1C is perfectly normal. I just got his blood test back last night. He has a 5.3 A1C.
Great.
But he's got a great big belly. He's got high blood pressure. His insulin is well within the range of what we consider normal. It was 12.5.
But you don't consider that.
But that is way too high.
Yeah, way too high.
And the reason for his belly and his high blood pressure. So if we only looked, which is what his doctors were doing, at his A1C, we'd say, well, it's perfect. It's 5.3. Well, doc, I'm 30 pounds overweight. Well, you just need to eat less and exercise more is what he's told. And that will never work because insulin is the hormone that tells the body when it is high to hold on to fat.
Can everybody hear that? You cannot burn fat if your insulin is high.
Cannot burn fat. I say it this way. The body cannot, will not, does not burn fat when insulin's high. I don't care what you do.
And you hear all the time, but my A1C is normal. My doctor says I don't need to do anything different, but they don't know that their insulin is high.
Right. And we see these high blood pressures and things, and Wake Forest University says 76% of high blood pressure is from insulin, high insulin. So we really need to know the insulin number. Now, the reason they don't measure it, and we've talked about this before, is because there's no drug to lower the insulin. There's only drugs to increase the insulin. So what would happen to somebody like my buddy? He's got a 5.3 right now, so he's perfectly normal, A1C. Although his insulin has climbed from what it should be, 2 to 4 to 12.5. Yeah. And so it
should be under 5, right?
It should be under 4 or under is what we would love to have. Okay. 5 or under we could live with.
Okay, 4 or under for your fasting insulin.
So what's happening is his body is having to make a lot of insulin to try to keep the blood sugar at his A1C of 5.3. So what will happen over time is his body will become more and more resistant to the insulin because it's constantly there.
And on the way to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah,
right?
So it's witnessed by the fact that he had not eaten for at least 8 hours and he still had a 12.5. So that means that the insulin is knocking on the cell door all the time, even when he's not eating. So what will happen is those cells will become more and more resistant. His body will have to make, his pancreas will have to make more and more insulin to try to keep the sugar down. What will happen is that will start to fail. That system over time will start to fail. His A1C will start to climb. When he gets to 5.7, they'll say, well, you're pre-diabetic. Now, he's probably 60 pounds overweight instead of 30 pounds overweight. His blood pressure's higher now.
And now 10 years has gone by.
And they put him on, and 5 or 10, 15 years, whatever, because the studies show we missed diagnosing type 2 diabetes by 10 to 15 years because we don't measure insulin. So now he'll be on something for his high blood pressure, which will cause him to become more insulin resistant. He will be on something for his high cholesterol, which will cause him to become more insulin resistant.
It's a dumpster fire.
He will be treated with drugs to increase his insulin.
Which is
all with
backwards.
Nobody ever measuring his insulin, which is too high.
You know that emoji where it's like a head exploding? That's what I'm seeing. My head is exploding.
This is the way that the standard medical community treats pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. They give them the thing that is causing it. Or they give them the ability to produce more of the thing that's causing it. And then when that fails over time, because that is the problem, they then give them injections of the same thing.
The insulin.
And they tell them it's a chronic progressive disease. So all my buddy has to do is follow a simple OptiU plan that I put together for him. And his numbers will normalize completely without any drugs in 99% of the cases.
OptiURx.com. You can go on there and click consultation with Billy. And in probably a few minutes, you can figure these kind of things out with people. And, in our last podcast, we talked about other important tests that are missed by the medical system. And that was a calcium score.
Yep.
And so between a calcium score and getting your doctor to order a fasting insulin, would you say those are two of the most important markers that
Absolutely.
that you think are missed? And
because here's the thing, Janet, that people overlook. What drives the calcium score up?
Oh,
insulin.
Insulin.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sugar and insulin. So when we're not measuring the insulin, we're missing the boat because it's inflammatory. It causes fat gain. It causes coronary artery calcium to be deposited. You look at the studies. I mean, insulin is, again, I'll say it, I think it's the most important hormone any of us can know.
Other things that can make your insulin get higher is stress.
Yes.
From high cortisol
Yes.
and not getting enough sleep.
Well, not getting enough sleep is very stressful to the body.
Yeah,
So then the adrenal glands will make more cortisol, and cortisol makes the blood sugar go up. It can cause the blood pressure to go up. It can cause havoc in our body. Now, cortisol is not bad. We need cortisol to wake up in the morning and go during the day. But chronically high cortisol is a real problem, and that is our stress hormone. So not sleeping is very stressful on the body and can cause rises in cortisol for sure.
All right, so insulin is a hormone.
What's the number one thing we use to help people get better quality sleep, though, Janet? It's not real difficult.
Magnesium?
It's not Ambien.
Magnesium.
It's 5 organic chelated salt, magnesium, correct.
Yeah,
So
the right
it works
forms of
wonders
magnesium.
for that stress relief and increasing the sleep.
Well, I can't say enough about your magnesium. So we can do a whole podcast on insulin, but we've got a few of them in the books already. So let's go to another hormone that's not a sex hormone, and you already talked about it. It's cortisol.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about cortisol being released from the adrenal glands. It helps regulate our blood sugar. Anything else we really need to know about cortisol?
Well, just need to know that it's designed to get us through stressful times, but it's not designed to be chronic.
Yeah.
So if we're chronically under pressure at work or at home, or, maybe you have a sick parent or, kid, and so you don't have a choice, I understand. But in general, we need to try to arrange a way where we have some relaxation time every week,
Turn your phone off.
Maybe go out for a walk, turn your phone off.
I think even the notifications, I get a ding for everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like is my cortisol level going up every time I'm getting a ding on my phone?
And blue lights from the phone and the TVs and the iPads and the Kindles and all the things we have today. So
not to mention politics, so we won't.
Right. I mean, there's so many stressful things out there, and we should be able to adapt to it. We should just not have it chronically where our cortisol is chronically high, because what happens is over time, a lot of times when you have chronically high cortisol, the adrenals are overworking to make cortisol because of all the stress. Then you will flatline your cortisol or invert your cortisol pattern. Then you can't sleep or you can't get up in the mornings. One of the two will happen depending on which way your cortisol went.
And they're both bad.
So it's really important to get good night's sleep. That is the best way to mitigate chronically high cortisol.
And can you test that? Is there a blood test?
Well, it's really not so much a blood test. It's more a spit test.
Okay.
Typically, you will spit in a tube 5 times during the day, morning, or a couple hours later, noon, afternoon, bedtime, supper, bedtime kind of thing. So that's the most accurate way, because a blood test will measure in the moment. But what we want to see is what we call a pattern.
During the day, throughout the day.
Goes up in the morning, then it starts to decline as the afternoon, and then in the evenings it should go back to the bottom, and then when the sun comes up, it goes back up. Okay. So that is the best way, is to have a 5-point saliva cortisol test. Yeah. Yep.
Good to know, because I feel like my cortisol is sometimes upside down.
Well, if you're sleeping well, it's probably not, but if you're having trouble getting up in the mornings, it possibly could be. So it is worth, if somebody's having some unexplained, maybe high heart rate or high blood pressure, or just can't sleep or feel nervous, and that kind of just like, I'm just not settled. It could certainly be worth checking. Yes.
Well, and another thing worth checking, which is rolling around to our next hormone that I want to ask you about, is thyroid. Thyroid, T3 and T4. Yep. Thyroid is a hormone.
It is. It's more than one hormone. There's actually several hormones, but we measure, or should measure, our T3 and our T4.
And this has to do with body temperature, with...
It is the gas pedal of our bodies, is the way I like to describe it. So yes, it controls our body temperature. It helps control blood pressure. It helps control fat burning. It helps the heart function more efficiently. So yes, having adequate levels of especially free T3 are very important, because if our thyroid is low and we don't have enough T3 in the system, and low is talking about the actual free T3 and free T4, because TSH will go up, which is what they typically measure. So it's a little bit complicated. Probably shouldn't have brought it up, but they will say your TSH is high, which typically will mean that your thyroid levels are low. It's an inverse correlation.
And we talked about that in so many different podcasts where we just focused on just Hashimoto's disease or thyroid.
So low thyroid can be losing hair, losing eyebrows, losing eyelashes, constipation, cold when you shouldn't be cold, when everybody else is not cold, sluggish, fatigued, tired, just don't feel right, can't burn fat no matter what you do, how much you exercise.
And I've been there through all that, but yet nobody tested my thyroid.
Now, well, they'll test your TSH. They won't test all the right numbers, typically.
Which I think is another reason why just sitting down in front of you can help connect those dots.
That's why, like my buddy, when he did my blood panel, we get all that. Yeah. We got his fasting insulin, we got his free T3, his free T4, his testosterone total, his free testosterone, his estradiol. I mean, we got a lot of stuff that they will typically not measure.
And insurance will pay for all those, labs. You just got to get your provider to ask for them.
Right.
So we covered those hormones. Now, of course, there's the sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. And typically we always talk about those. So I want to skip on to some other hormones that we don't normally think of. And the next one is growth hormone.
Wow. That's a pretty important one.
Yeah. Tell us about growth hormone.
Well, growth hormone is released from our pituitary. And so growth hormone is responsible for exactly what it says.
Growing.
It helps us grow, which it's released most efficiently when we sleep. And I tell everybody, that's why you see infants, they eat, they poop, and they sleep, right?
And they're growing.
And that's because they're growing at a higher rate. Obviously, they're developing. So they will be releasing growth hormone while they sleep. And so that allows their body to develop. Now, for people who are already fully grown, right, we're already adults, growth hormone is still released at different rates, obviously, but growth hormone is responsible for a lot of things that we think of as really good things, like our ability to burn fat, our ability to
build
use
muscle,
insulin and sugar efficiently, our ability to build muscle. And as we age, obviously, we don't release as much growth hormone.
At what age does it slow down?
It's different for different people, but typically, really over 45 or 50, you really start to see it drop off.
And I think during perimenopause.
Well, that would kind of be that
45
to 55 for women kind of range, typically.
We talk about peptides a lot, and when I went to my first hormone doctor, the very first thing that I was put on was a peptide for growth hormone, for stimulating my growth hormone, or growth hormone releasing hormone.
Well, there's some that stimulate it and some that just cause it to release, right?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And so, that's another avenue for helping your growth hormone.
It can be, and growth hormone can be very effective for a lot of different things as people age, but it's growth hormone is very regulated and very expensive and very hard to get because unfortunately the FDA has tied the physician's hands that you have to have this particular test, and unless you have true like PTSD or brain injury or something, you probably are not going to, I'll call it fail the test so you can pass and get growth hormone.
So you can't get a prescription.
So it's really very difficult to get, even though it can be a game changer for people.
No, I can remember when I used to be a personal trainer at the mecca of bodybuilding at Gold's Gym Venice.
Yeah.
These guys would come in and within a short period of time, they would start to look like the Hulk, and they were using
they're using big
high doses of growth hormone.
When we talk about using growth hormone, we're talking about using a physiologic dose for the person's age.
Okay.
Yeah. So we would not get those effects. However, you would get some benefits of that, but not the big growth and all that.
And there's a difference in these therapeutic dosages of whether you're talking about a peptide or growth hormone, or especially with testosterone, and you think back to that bodybuilding world.
Yeah.
Those are different.
Those are different doses. Yeah, that's
completely
right.
different.
And by the way, Janet, a lot of those people are not really using real growth hormone. They're using
synthetic.
I'll call it bro science hormone, growth hormone that is not exactly equivalent. So true growth hormone is 191 amino acid sequence, period. And the body recognizes that, right?
191.
191. A lot of times these guys are using these labs, we'll call them, make 192 sequence. Apparently that is
different.
Easier, but it causes faster muscle growth. So don't recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on before we get too much down that rabbit hole to another hormone, which is melatonin.
I love melatonin. Yeah. So melatonin is produced to help us sleep, and it is produced when it gets dark. So when we're looking at all the blue screens, like the phone, the iPad, the TV, the lights on the ceiling are typically blue lights, even though we think of them as white, right? They say soft white or whatever. That will tell our body that it's daylight, and it will reduce the production of melatonin. So in the evenings, it's great if you can have some amber light, like the sun. When the sun's going down, the sky will often turn amber color,
orange color,
before it gets dark. that signals the body, that color, and that signals the body to make melatonin. So you can now get lights that are that color. They're amber, or they'll turn amber at a certain time in the evening. You can get blue blocking glasses, they're called, that will be an amber shade and kind of block some of the negative effects of the blue light. You can start wearing a few hours before bedtime.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, they're really good. And that way, if you still want to watch TV or
You're not
look
getting
at your
the
phone
same-
or your iPad, you can do it without getting all the blue light through.
It's amazing. I was just thinking, whether it's sleep or whether it's diet, that our bodies still work best if we go back to like the caveman era, like when we lived in a cave. We got up in the morning and started to see light gradually. And
That's
then at
right.
night, the lights are going down. There
Right.
were no screens.
And when you do that, the other hormone that you ask about, cortisol, will function the way it's supposed to function. But melatonin has so many benefits that it's very anti-cancer. It's a great antioxidant. Some of these, probably not in the United States, but clinics that treat cancer outside of the United States use really high doses of melatonin.
Should we all be taking a supplement
Well,
with melatonin?
I don't know that everybody should be taking it, but some people take it in higher doses, not for sleep, but just to protect against cancers and things. There's some really good research about breast cancer. There's some really good research about prostate cancer in men, and that makes sense because they're really made from the same type of tissue, a man's prostate and a woman's breast.
Right.
So it makes sense that if one was improved, the other one would probably be improved. But there are some really good indicators that higher doses of melatonin can help treat or prevent certain cancers for sure. So
Would you
if
only take it
everybody
at night?
Yeah, typically we would only see it at night.
Okay.
Now, again, some people take it and it's not for sleep; it's for other reasons.
So when you find a supplement and it says SR, does that mean sustained release?
Typically, that would mean sustained release.
So if I was taking melatonin SR,
Should be released. Well, our melatonin that I formulated, SR, releases over about 6 hours.
Okay.
So if somebody says, I don't have a problem
okay,
going to sleep,
okay.
but I can't stay
you
asleep.
still take it at night.
We use the SR.
Gotcha.
If somebody says, hey, I just can't go to sleep at night, we're using the magnesium always with this. We'd use the magnesium, and then I have a chewable melatonin that works quicker.
Okay.
So it will, the onset of action of that is faster than the SR, but it's not, the chewable is not going to last 6 hours. So if they just have trouble turning it off at night and going to sleep, we use that, and magnesium and L-theanine if it's mind chatter. And then if they have trouble staying asleep, we use the SR. And some people have both, and we have to use both.
I know I was in your pharmacy last week and called you on the spot when somebody walked in and they were like, I need something for sleep. And I was like, let's make sure it's L-theanine and how much should they take and all that. So tell us about L-theanine.
L-theanine is an amino acid from green tea that increases alpha brain waves. So it really helps slow the mind down. So
Okay.
if you're laying there like a lot of folks and they're thinking about the 42 things they need to do in the morning, right? Got to get the kids here, there, whatever.
Yeah.
The business needs this. The wife needs this. The husband needs this. That can really help tone down that mind chatter.
And L-theanine can be used for anxiety. I hear
Absolutely.
It's great for
Like,
anti-anxiety.
It's great for anxiety. It's great for anybody who has ADHD or ADD. It's great if you are one of these people who say, I'm just nervous if I'm getting on a plane.
Now, would you
can
use
just
it in a
calm.
dropper under the tongue any time of day?
You can
for that
use it
kind of
under a
thing?
dropper or a capsule any time of day. If you want a quicker onset of action, we have the liquid under the tongue. And if you say, hey, I just take it on a regular basis, take the capsules.
All right. Well, let's get back to the hormones. I love talking about L-theanine. Another hormone that's not a sex hormone, leptin.
Yep.
Tell us about leptin.
So leptin is our hormone that is made in our fat cells, most typically, that tells us that we're full.
I think about a happy leprechaun. That's how I remember that
so
one.
when we're eating, leptin is produced, and it says, hey, you've had enough. Okay?
And so when we get that satiety, when we're satiated or whatever you want to call it, and we feel good and we've had enough to eat, that's the leptin working?
Correct. That would be the leptin
The happy
signal.
leprechaun.
That's the leptin saying, hey, you've had, you know, it's time to stop. Yep.
And a lot of people get leptin mixed up with another hormone, which is ghrelin, and I think of the growling,
Right.
Ghrelin,
So
the
ghrelin
gremlin.
is our
almost.
hunger hormone.
Okay, that's
so
how I
ghrelin
remember
is
that.
produced and says, "Hey, it's time to eat."
Yeah,
So when you feel those hunger pains,
hangry.
yeah, that's right. The hangry hormone is ghrelin. That's correct. But ghrelin and leptin work hopefully in a harmony
together.
that ghrelin says it's time to eat. We eat hopefully quality proteins and somewhere
good fat.
in our food, that satiate us, which then will tell leptin to be produced, and leptin says, "Hey, you've had enough." So the most satiating thing that we can eat that turns the leptin signal on is protein,
Okay.
good quality protein.
And I love that happy leprechaun feeling versus the growling of
Yes.
the ghrelin.
Yes.
And, if we circle back to peptides, one of the things that the GLP-1s do is help to turn those signals
They
on or off.
They do affect those signals. That's right.
So,
Yep.
got two more hormones to get through.
All right.
So, adrenaline.
So adrenaline would be like a cousin, we'll call it, to cortisol.
Okay.
But adrenaline is more an immediate release. We know it in the medical world, it's known as epinephrine.
Oh, okay.
So adrenaline is immediate. That's your fight or flight. The bear comes in the room, we got to fight the bear. The man comes in with a gun or the woman comes in with a gun. That's adrenaline. That's epinephrine. It's released really fast, raises the heart rate, turns off things that aren't necessary at the time, right?
Right.
So we really want the fight or flight to be short-lived, right?
Right.
We fight
Right.
the bear. The bear's gone. We want the adrenaline to come back down.
And everything's a bear right now.
Yeah.
Feels
So
like.
adrenaline is our fast stress hormone, like our immediate stress hormone, whereas cortisol is more our long, hopefully not, but it is our more long-term stress hormone. So those work kind of the same way, but
That helps.
adrenaline and epinephrine should be faster.
Okay.
Like that's a real urgent emergency
Okay.
situation.
Like when the car turns over and it's on top of someone.
And the mom can pick it up.
and turn
That's
it
correct.
back over. That's
That's
your
epinephrine.
adrenaline.
That's correct.
All right.
Yep.
Got one more. The love hormone,
Yep.
oxytocin.
Yep. Well, oxytocin is known as like the love or the cuddle hormone, right? So oxytocin is released like when you're just a simple hug, which is why you'll see a lot of moms and even dads when an infant is born, they will lay the baby like without a shirt on their chest.
Yeah.
Because that releases oxytocin
yeah, it's a good
for both
feeling.
the parent and the baby. Oxytocin is released at orgasm. There's a big release of oxytocin. So that's oftentimes why people say, after sex, we want to cuddle.
I'm in love.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a great, it's a hormone that's released that is designed for that. But a simple 10 or 15, I think it's 10 seconds if you look back, hug of somebody can, and it doesn't have to be like a sexual related hug, okay? It can be, you hadn't seen your buddy in a while or you hadn't seen your friend in a
and
while.
you're
kind of
happy.
hug. Yeah, or it can be, your child or your grandchild kind of hug. So it's not all related to sex, but that is what people think of most commonly.
And I think we got really low on oxytocin like during the pandemic,
Well, when you're not
stopped
around
hugging
people,
each other.
yeah, it does make it, if you got to stay 6 feet,
Yeah.
supposedly going to help. And wear a mask, it's kind of hard to do. Yeah.
So I love connecting all these dots because, you talk about treating the whole body. And so, during just this little talk this morning, I'm connecting the dots of so many things in my past when it comes to hormones, when it comes to that I lost all of my eyelashes and my hair fell out and came back white when I was very young, probably because of my hormones coupled with the fact that I was a vegan and a vegetarian. I wasn't getting proper nutrition and my hormones were all out of whack. So just, so many things I'm learning and
Yep.
and loving peptides.
Yeah.
And so love these conversations. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. And I just hope that more people will like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, and I hope people find value in these.
And write in and ask questions, because today was another Ask Billy episode.
Those are questions that we're getting, right? You're getting them every week.
And you don't get to prepare. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
But if anybody thinks of something you want to know about or want us to discuss, we would love to hear from you.
Okay. Awesome. See you next week.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks.